Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a change that was so big, it completely rewired human society. I'm talking about the Neolithic Revolution, that incredible moment we went from chasing our food to actually growing it ourselves. And, that single shift is pretty much the reason our world looks the way it does today.
You got to imagine, for almost all of human history, life was just a constant search for the next meal. Our ancestors were nomads, hunter-gatherers, always on the move, following the herds and the seasons. But then, around 10,000 years ago, something amazing happened. A change that would eventually lead to villages, then cities, and, well, the world that you and I live in right now. This is that story.
All right, so to really get this revolution, we have to rewind the clock. We need to go back to the end of the last ice age. This was a time of huge, massive change, a world literally being reborn from under the ice.
So as all that ice melted and the planet started to warm up, totally new landscapes appeared, new forests, vast grasslands. Now this created some big challenges, but also some incredible opportunities for our ancestors. They had to adapt to these brand new environments and find new things to eat. And in doing that, they stumbled onto a discovery that would change the course of history forever.
Now, what's really wild when you look at this timeline is just how fast everything happened. The end of the Ice Age was like a starting gun for innovation. I mean, in just a few thousand years, we went from hunting and gathering to farming and herding. In the grand scheme of human history, that is the blink of an eye.
So how did this new era even begin? Well, it started with a really simple but totally revolutionary idea: agriculture. Instead of just taking whatever nature happened to provide, our ancestors began to shape the natural world to fit their own needs.
Okay, so one of the most important places for this revolution, kind of like a cradle of civilization, was a region in West Asia that we now call the Fertile Crescent. It was here, around 9,000 years ago, that people first started cultivating crops like wheat and barley and domesticating animals like goats and sheep.
And what's so fascinating is that farming wasn't invented just once. It wasn't a one-off thing. It actually popped up independently all over the world. You had people in China cultivating rice, while folks in Mesoamerica were growing maize. It was this truly global phenomenon, with each region figuring out how to domesticate its own local plants and animals.
And we know this isn't just some theory, right? We have physical evidence of this transition. Archaeological sites like Jarmo in what is now modern-day Iraq are basically time capsules. They're some of the oldest known villages on Earth, and they show us exactly how these communities started shifting away from hunting and gathering towards a life built around agriculture.
But this wasn't just about a new menu. It was a complete and total shift in our relationship with the planet itself.
Think about it this way. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans were basically consumers. We took what nature offered. But with farming, we became producers. We started to actively create our own food. It's the difference between finding an apple on a tree and planting an entire orchard.
And this monumental change is what historians call the Neolithic Revolution, sometimes called the Food Production Revolution. Neolithic just means New Stone Age, and it gets its name from all the new kinds of polished stone tools that came along with this new way of life. It really was a revolution that remade humanity from the ground up.
So once you have a reliable food source, everything changes. That first seed that was planted, well, it planted the roots of a whole new kind of society, with consequences that would ripple out for thousands of years.
The most immediate and maybe the most dramatic effect was on the population. With a steadier, more predictable food source, communities could support more people, bigger families. For the first time ever, the human population began to skyrocket, a trend that, let's be honest, has continued ever since.
And it makes sense, right? To take care of your crops, you have to stay in one place. That nomadic lifestyle just wasn't practical anymore. So people started building permanent villages. And this stability sparked a wave of new inventions. People started weaving textiles, making pottery to store their grain, and developing all these sophisticated polished stone tools like axes, sickles, and grinding stones, all designed specifically for this new farming life.
And we're not talking about a couple of huts here. We've found the ruins of huge, organized settlements like Jericho and Çatalhöyük in West Asia. These were some of the world's very first towns, bustling communities built entirely on the foundation of agriculture.
Okay, so finally, let's look at the long-term social consequences. Because the Neolithic Revolution didn't just change our diet and our tools, it literally created the blueprint for what we call modern civilization.
For the very first time in human history, farming could produce a surplus, more food than a community needed just to survive. This extra food basically became a form of wealth, and the people who controlled that surplus, well, they gained power. This led directly to the idea of private property and, for the first time, real social differences. And right there, that's the dawn of social stratification, the division of society into different classes based on wealth and status. This whole new social structure, with leaders and laborers, the rich and the poor, this was the essential framework that the first great cities and complex civilizations would be built on.
So, when you boil it all down, the Neolithic Revolution was so much more than just a new way to get dinner. It was the birth of civilization as we know it. It gave us permanent homes, incredible new technologies, and the complex, layered societies that we all live in today. It was the moment we stopped being just another species on the planet and really started to shape the world ourselves.